Hello, and welcome to ASP Runner and PHP Runner tutorials. In this demonstration, I will walk you through a step-by-step process of how to use security settings. Let's discuss a particular business scenario where we have a database with sales-related information and we need to set up a user security for this data. For simplicity, we have only two tables. We have orders data stored in a single table called orders. And we have employees table that stores information about people managing the orders. Our job is to grant user access to the orders table. If we look at the table structure of these two tables, we will see that both of them have a common field employee ID. In orders table, it identifies an employee who owns that particular order. It will become very important when we establish the security for this table. One other key element to notice is the field group, which determines which group the user belongs to. It will also come into play when we'll be setting different levels of access based on that group. Now let's jump over to ASP Runner and set up the security. In ASP Runner, you have two options how you can password protect the access to your web pages. First one is to hard code the username and password, in which case all of the users will share the same login. Option 2 would be to store the individual username and password combinations in the database. And as you probably already figured out, that is the topic I will be covering in greater detail. So let's start by selecting the users table that is storing the individual usernames and passwords. As you already know, in my case it's an employee table. The field first name stores our usernames and the field last name stores our passwords. Now that I will go into the advanced settings where I can set how I want the users to view and edit the information in the table. I will go ahead and allow the users to view and edit their own data only in the orders table. As we already said, employee ID will be a link field between the users table and main table. Now let's set up user group permissions. To accomplish that, once again we have two options. First, we can set up static permissions, meaning that once you assign a set of permissions to a group, you can only change them in ASP Runner, which would also require rebuild of our project. Or you can create user groups with a set of dynamic permissions, which would allow you to modify the permissions and assign users to certain groups right from the web application that ASP Runner will build. I will show you both methods, but it will be up to you to decide which one is the most suitable. Let's start with static permissions. I will need to choose a group ID field, which is the key group identifier that we talked about in the beginning of this tutorial. If you still remember, that field was called group. So we'll have three groups. First group is users that will only be able to view, search, print, and export the records. Second group is the managers that can do everything a user can plus edit the records. And the third group is the admins group that can do everything a manager can, plus add and delete records in the table. I will also explicitly permit the admin group to view and edit all of the records in the table. Now let's build the project and see how different users have different levels of permissions based on the groups they belong to. First, I will log in as user Laura. As you can see, she has access only to the orders she owns. As a user, she can't edit, add, or delete any records in the table. Now I will log in as a manager Steven. He also has access only to his own records, but this time he also has the edit capabilities. And now let's log in as administrator Andrew. Unlike all previous employees, Andrew has a full access to all records in the database. He can view, search, edit, delete, and add new records to the table. Now let's go back to ASP Runner and see how to set up dynamic permissions. With dynamic permissions, the user group permissions are stored in database tables, which ASP Runner will create, but could also be updated online. 3 tables will be created to store permissions, groups, and group users. You can either select a default prefix for the table names, or type in your own. Keep in mind that you can reuse the same tables for multiple projects. You will also need to assign a user to be an administrator to log in for the first time. You can either select a user from a list of users or create an admin user from scratch. Now let's build the project again and log in as administrator so we can create new groups, set permissions, and assign users to the groups. After login, the first thing to notice is the new link admin area. Here we have 3 tables that allow to set the permissions, assign users to groups, and add and edit users. So just like I did with static permission in ASP Runner, I will create 3 groups: users, managers, and admin, and set the permissions. The group users will have permissions to view, print, and export the records. The group managers I will create with the permissions to have the users' permissions, plus an ability to edit their own records. I will not create another admin group because by default, ASP Runner already created an admin group for us with full permissions and access to all records. Also, as an administrator, I have a full access to users table. Now that we've created the users groups, I will assign the user to those groups. Andrew belongs to the admin group. Steven will be a part of managers group. Everybody else will be a user. Now, just like I did earlier in this tutorial, I will log in under 3 different types of users to illustrate the difference in permissions that we've established. First, I will log in as Laura. As a member of group user, she can only view, print, and export the orders she owns. Now, if I log in as a manager Steven, he still can see only his own records, but for him, the edit function is now available. And finally, when I log in under Andrew, who is administrator, I have a complete access to all records and full permissions to view, add, edit, and delete any records in the table. As we are coming toward the end of this tutorial, I would like to show you a couple of very helpful features related to users' login settings. For example, you can create a new user registration page. By clicking Choose Fields button, you can select fields that will appear on that page. You can also secure your pages from spam abusers by activating the CAPTCHA protection, which easily determines whether the user is a computer or a human. In addition, you can restrict the users from entering weak passwords. Also, you can build the pages where they can request the password reminders or change the passwords. Do not forget to specify the email settings, including the field where the user email is stored, if you are going to create new user registration page with send email option, remind password, and change password pages. And now you have all the necessary knowledge and tools to set the security for your website.